Right. Welcome back, everybody, to another live streaming episode of Alternative Money Monday. Thanks for being here, everybody. Great to see all these smiling faces and good to have everybody back. So we're doing another interview with Ken Anderson from Launchbadge this week. Super happy to have you on here. Of course, I'm JR, co-founder of Ledgerama, the makers of Walla Wallet, the original, the safest, and the most trusted mobile wallet in the Hedera ecosystem. I'm joined today by, looks like we're going to be joined by Tony as well. So I'm joined by my partner and our CTO, lead developer of Walla Wallet, Rob Keynes, our community manager, Tim Mungai. We're joined by my favorite influencer in the Web3 ecosystem, Brandon, the HBAR Bull, and just popping in to join us as well, Tony. Hey, Tony, how's it going?
Hey, guys. Glad I could make it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for being here.
Sure.
All right, so we got a jam-packed episode because today we're catching up with Launchbadge. So Launchbadge, of course, for folks that are familiar with the Hedera ecosystem, Launchbadge is a well-known name, as is Ken Anderson. Super OGs, very early, probably one of the earliest teams, if not the earliest team in the Hedera ecosystem, and absolutely instrumental in so many things Hedera. It's great to have you, Ken. How's it going?
Yeah, it's great to be back. I love these interviews, and especially when we get all these smart people and good-looking people on the same call. It's always a pleasure.
Well, appreciate that. All right, so lots of stuff to cover. Of course, you guys know the routine. If you've got any questions for Ken, if there's anything you want to throw out there, you're more than welcome to jump in. But it is a jam-packed episode. There's tons of stuff, and we're going to do a couple. We've got our jam token giveaways. We're going to give away some jam tokens to folks at the end of the interview. We're going to give away some jam tokens to our Twitter family. But tons of stuff to cover. So Ken, last time on Alternative Money Monday, the HBAR Names Future of Online Identity episode, we heard some of the story about how you got started in the early Hedera ecosystem, how basically it all started with a mango smoothie, and you met Mance Harmon and bought him a mango smoothie and told him that you were interested in licensing the Hashgraph service algorithm. So. And that's how you wound up becoming the very first developer advocate on the Hedera ecosystem. And then in that process, it sounded like you stepped away from Launchbadge, had to kind of step away from it a little bit. Launchbadge kept running, but I wanted to hear a little bit more about the Launchbadge story. How did Launchbadge get started in the first place? And sounded like, if I understand it, it was you had a partnership with Ryan. And I'd kind of like to hear just about the very earliest days, kind of the primordial soup of Launchbadge, so to speak. What was the first, what were some of the earliest and first problems that you guys were looking to solve?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can go way back. I went to college, and then I did some time in the military. I worked as in the intelligence community. And I kind of got out of that in about 2005. I'd left the military, did my time, and I went into sales because intelligence, specifically interrogation, translates really well to sales. So,
interesting.
So I ended up getting into a company that did construction insurance sales for the state of California for builders in California. So if you were building stuff, if you were a building contractor, then I was doing insurance policies for that. And I remember building some software that helped me do my job better and going to my boss and saying, hey, I'll sell this to you for, I think it was like $10,000 or something like that. It was some ridiculously low amount of money. And I had spent a few weeks building it, and it was helping me be more productive. I think I was like number 3 in the company, and actually in the state, I was like in the top 10 insurance sales guys in the state after a few years using that technology. And he basically said, if you have time to write software, you have time to be on the phones, get back out there on the phones. And I was like, man, this is so short-sighted. And so I left the company and immediately turned around and sold the software to his competition for about $300,000. And that was my first success in software. I'd always kind of built software. My degree was management information systems. I had always built software to help solve business problems. That was kind of my thing, is just find the business problem and solve it with software. And so that was my first success. And then I turned around and used that to start up a software company where I was building education software. And then I think it was around 2008 or somewhere in there, maybe 2010, I had somebody come and say, it was a friend of mine who introduced me to somebody else in the telecom space who said, hey, I want you to build software for the telecom space. And I was like, well, I know a little bit about sales software. I know a little bit about training and education software. And he says, that's fine. I'll invest the next year for you to learn everything there is to learn about the telecom space. So I spent the next year traveling the world to conferences, learning everything there was to learn about telecommunications software, specifically on the business support side. Telecom breaks it up into business support and operational support systems. And so I was on the business support side, which is all of your sales and billing and settlement and all of that stuff that helps you sell the thing that you're selling, helps you sell the telecom thing.
Right.
And so I ended up building software there and started a company with that partner. And I was the CTO of the company. And Ryan was actually one of my later hires. We kind of got to the point where it was like, okay, I'm done researching. Let's start building software for the telecom space, specifically integrating billing and sales. And so I was introduced to Ryan from one of our existing employees, and he basically said, yeah, we took a class together at a community college locally. Ryan was a student intern working for the state, which is an interesting story in itself. And I went to Ryan and I said, okay, what do I need to do to get you to come work for me? And he says, well, just pay me more than what I'm getting paid at the state. And I said, okay, what are you getting paid at the state? And he was like, $12 an hour. And I was like, how does $12.50 an hour sound? He's like, sounds great. And so it was hilarious because he joined, and then after 2 weeks, I just started to recognize his genius. I was just like, holy cow, this guy's brilliant. He's not only is he solving the problem I'm asking, he's solving a lot of the problems I'm not asking for. We gave him this one task of like, when somebody's calling in, I want my CRM screen on my computer to pop up with whoever's calling's phone number, right? And so we had some open source CRM software we were tweaking. And not only did he do that, but he like started an auto tracking timer that would log the time that you were on the call and track it into the CRM and then prompt you to put in notes after the call hangs up to say what was the result of the call. So like, not only did he solve a problem I gave him that I said, by the way, you have 2 weeks to solve, and in 2 days he had it solved. So not only did he solve the problem I asked for, but he like went above and beyond and solved a bigger problem. After about a year, if I'm just continually doing that and kind of climbing up the food chain as he became lead developer and then head developer. And then at some point I said, you know what, he's a better CTO than I am. I'm going to switch over to the COO side. And so my founding partner of that company said, yeah, we'll make you president and COO, and we'll move Ryan into CTO. Then we spent 3 years building a team and working together on that project. And we'll just say that there were some administrative differences between the founders and us. And, it's a story that's pretty common in startup space. So maybe this does resonate, but basically we were running on a shoestring budget, and we'd been doing it for 3 years. And the developers are like, okay, we need to get this thing to market so we can make some money, so we can start paying our people more, so we can start getting some traction and maybe doing some product market fit, like validating that this is actually a good product. And we were getting
a familiar story, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really common story. I mean, I would just argue that the sooner you can get the product market fit, the better. In hindsight, having gone through this a few times,
right?
Like the sooner you can get the product market fit, the better. And so even if that means your MVP is like a 3-month effort that you put into it, and you can release it as an early access product, like get it out there and start getting feedback from the market. Because you're making a lot of assumptions. I'll tell you, you're going to waste a lot of time building features that nobody wants. And then you're going to miss the features that they do want. And you see this over and over again. Like somebody builds a single feature dApp in the Web3 space, and everybody goes gaga over it. And it's like, oh, that's what people want. And they do it quickly and they get it out there, and it doesn't even have to be robust. It's what people want. So
it's the chicken sandwich of Chick-fil-A, right? They just do chicken sandwiches, but they do it the best, right?
Yeah. This is music to my ear, Ken, because with Twidigital, the company that we're building, we're just about to enter that phase. So yes. Tell us more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, what's the name of the company? I think it was 37 Studios was the name of the company. The guys who did High Rise HQ and Basecamp, they built those products. They had this wonderful book. I think it was called Underdoing the Competition. But their whole argument was like, if you're always trying to outdo the competition, you're just going to end up in this like endless cycle of unsustainable one-upping of each other. And at some point, it's just a matter of who has more features and who gets the right enterprise client. But he basically said, hey, if you can do a simple feature better than everybody else, you'll win on that simple feature. So it's like do less, but better. And that's kind of stuck with me for years. So this is where we were is basically we were building what we call the partner relation management platform for the telecom space, which allowed, if you're familiar with channel sales, the idea is you have direct sales who work for the telcos, and then you have channel sales, which are all of your like, electrical and telephone installers, anybody who's an indirect salesperson who basically has a contract with the telco to sell their services. And what we were trying to do was build this system that supported the channel because there really wasn't a lot of good software out there to support the channel. And so we built this partner relation management platform, which is basically a CRM, but it supports both your upline partners, being the telcos, and integration with them, and your downline partners if you have any resellers below you. So it was this whole idea of like, let's build this sales ecosystem that you could integrate up and down. And we built this incredible product. We had it working. As a matter of fact, if you're familiar with single page applications, like Ryan was one of the founders of Chaplin.js, which was one of the first single page application frameworks that won Black Duck open source software award of the year, I think back in 2012, actually. So we were so far ahead in the web application space. And I remember going and doing demos where our servers were in the US, but it was a single page application and we were demoing it in France at a telco conference. And people would click on a contact in the PRM, the partner relation management platform, and the page would load the content so quickly that they didn't even realize that anything had changed. They'd be looking at the page and they go click and they're like, when's something gonna happen? We're like, it happened right when you clicked. So we actually had to like add like a little colorful loading bar at the very top that just like took 200 milliseconds to scroll across the screen just to visually tell people that something changed. But this was just one of those things of like, we had built something incredible. We were excited about it. We had built an entire framework that helped us develop these incredibly responsive apps. We knew that if you were using Salesforce, you're getting 1 second page loads, which was just the most painful thing in the world if you're a salesperson. And we were demonstrating these almost instantaneous page loads from across the world. And so we thought, oh, this is incredible. Let's go to market. But the other founding partners in this project had said, no, we still need to have XY feature because Salesforce has XY feature. And we're like, oh, let's just get to market. Like, let's sell to somebody. Like, it doesn't have to be enterprise grade competing with Salesforce day one. And this drug on for about a year. And we decided, you know what? People on our team started to quit because they were just like demoralized because they were putting all this effort into a project. They were working for pennies and stock options, by the way. We used to joke that, I'll take a t-shirt over options because at least you could wear a t-shirt. But I will tell you, if you do options and you get to market quickly, there could be serious value there. There are plenty of projects out there that people have done very well in the options. It's just, I think people who are first-time founders or maybe second-time founders and try to offer options don't necessarily understand how that works into the incentive model for startup folks. And so we basically, employees started leaving. And I remember Ryan just saying, like, if this other person leaves, the whole project's dead. And he's like, I can't sustain this whole project myself. And that person ended up leaving. And I remember going to the CEO and saying, our team's falling apart. We need more funding, or we need to get to market, like, or both. And they were just basically saying, no, we'll do with what we've got. And then Ryan was just like, no, I'm done. I'm out. And so he left. And crazy enough, he had a job lined up with the state to do data entry, which is like, talk about overqualified.
Yeah, right. Back to $12 an hour.
Exactly. And oh man, I think back to those days, and like, I think I was bringing in $3,000 a month as the CTO with all these options and hopes that we're going to sell something soon. I mean, it was a painful time, right? So I got the feeling of like what it feels like to be a founder in a couple ways. But when Ryan left, I basically said, hey guys, this project's dead. I can't keep spinning my wheels on this. Either you guys inject some money or I got to go too. And they refused to inject money or even take it to market. And I think they inject money. I think they injected what they could. So I don't want to hold that against them, but it was almost too late because we hadn't gone to market. And I said, okay, guys, I'm out too. I had a client call me. I mean, this is serendipity, divine providence, whatever you want to call it, divine intervention. But I put in my notice, I'm out, I've left the company. And literally the next day I have a friend of mine from a local, it's called the Hacker Lab. It's kind of like a communal hacker space / maker space. And a contact from there called me and said, hey, we're building this HR platform. Can you help us build this HR platform? And so I immediately called up Ryan and I said, hey, Ryan, I've got a gig here that's going to pay us like $15,000 a month just between you and I to build the software. And he said, okay. And so we both took a $5,000 salary or a $5,000 salary a month, which was a raise from what we were getting before. And we agreed to take the other $5,000 and put that towards growing the company. And so we had almost doubled our salaries overnight. And then we owned our own company and we were 50-50 partners and we were profitable from day one. And then it just grew from there. We picked up another $1 million project a few months later that allowed us to start hiring. And then we had a lot of projects that came and went. And the company, we learned a lot of lessons along the way of helping other people overcome the technical blockage of growing a company. That first HR company had software, but the issue was it was custom software for every client, and they needed us to build something that was more SaaS so that they could kind of like semi-custom for their clients. But instead of having 2 engineers working on every client, they could have 1 engineer supporting 10 clients, for example. And so that's what we did. We helped them scale their business by optimizing their technology and building some middleware stuff that they needed. So that was really the first project for Launchbadge. And people ask where we got the name Launchbadge, and I will tell you it was the domain was available. And then we went the other direction.
This is so often the case. You're like, well, I like this name, but that one's not available. So you just kind of go through the list. That name selection process can be pretty painful.
Yeah, we were like, we got to take 2 words that are both single syllable, right, smash them together and find a domain that works, right?
Yep.
We found Launchbadge, and we're like, okay, how do we weave a story around this? And we're like, well, we're helping people launch their companies or their products, and when they successfully do that, we'll give them a merit badge. Which has been our vision. As a matter of fact, there's a few projects out there that we're going to be issuing launch badges to, which is literally like our logo on a merit badge on a plaque that we make 2 copies. We give one to them, and then we take the other one and put it on our wall here.
Nice.
We've got a few projects that have earned it, but we haven't issued it. And then we've got a handful that have just recently earned it that we're going to be issuing. So when you come into our offices in Sacramento, you'll see like eventually a wall of these plaques of companies that have launched.
You should have just talked to my wife, Ken. She, she gave us the name Ledgerama. We told her we needed a name and we needed something that didn't have a domain name for it. But she's charging us $30 million for the name.
Yeah, I've got a big debt. I owe a big debt to Rob's wife. $30 million. It's just a steep price to pay for the name, but we went with it. So Ken, you mentioned last time that there was that you needed the Hashgraph algorithm. You wanted the license for it. What was that use case that you needed it for? If you can talk about it, and what happened to it? Did it wind up getting completed? Did it kind of just get shelved? What happened with that?
No, that's actually Mingo was the project. So
okay.
So Joe, who's the CEO of Mingo, we had known each other for about 10 years before I even started Launchbadge.
Okay.
We knew each other through a mutual friend. And our mutual friend always calls me up and says, hey, Ken, there's this business that's starting out in Europe somewhere, and they're doing this technology thing. Can you look at me and look at it for me and tell me if there's anything to the technology? Right. So I'm kind of his vetting. I'm his sounding wall. And so he comes to me all the time. And Joe's project was one of those where he said, hey, I got this guy, Joe. He's building this. At the time, it was a different project, and he wanted me to look at it. Then a few years later, after I'd started Launchbadge, Joe called me and said, hey, I got this idea for this kind of like chat aggregation app. And I said, okay, tell me about it. And he told me about it. And the vision for it originally was, Mingo Chat, which has, you can connect Facebook, you could connect Instagram, Twitter, all of your chat channels. And then you consolidate the chat stream by contact. So the idea was, okay, I know you on Discord and Slack and 5 different channels, But instead of me figuring out where you last sent the message, I just look in Mingo and I can just see our continuous stream across all of our chat apps. And so that was his original vision. He and his wife came up with that. And I said, okay, yep, nope, this is how you build it. This is how much it's going to cost. And he kind of went through a couple friends and family rounds and raised some funds to start building it. And so we were building that. We started in 2016, at the beginning of 2016. And by the summer of 2016, we had a proof of concept. And it was just, he's trying to raise funds. We get a little bit of work done. It goes on pause for a little bit. He raises more money, get a little more work done. It goes on pause for a little bit. Well, so summer of actually it was early 2017. That's when all of the ICO stuff started kicking off. That was actually when I sold my Bitcoin and bought a bunch of Ethereum or Ether. And I had the best luck with that buying. It was so weird. Like, I would not consider myself an expert in crypto economics at all. It just happened to be timing was perfect. But I remember him coming to me and saying, hey, there's a bunch of money going into this ICO thing. We've got an app that's real and live. How can crypto help us? And I remember thinking like, well, I'm not sure how crypto can help us. Maybe there's something around payments we can do. And if you looked at Mingo originally, the original tagline was something to the effect of like, where sending money is as easy as sending a text message. So that was kind of the vision of Mingo originally. So there was some of that was being done. The question was, how do we get mainstream adoption with that if we're sending USD? Stable coins weren't really a thing at the time. On and off ramps were non-existent. So it was just one of those things of like, okay, we can send crypto as easy as sending a text message, but how do we send money as easy as sending a text message? And that was the vision. We also had this concept of like having trusted conversations where you and I can say, hey, from this message forward, let's have a trusted conversation. I hit secure, you hit secure on your end, and now our conversation's recorded to the blockchain forever, right? So we have like this public proof of hashes, a series of hashes that records our conversation. So it was like this provenance mechanism, so that for legal purposes or for agreement purposes, or if you're just like making a dare or bet with your buddies and you want to be like, this is what you said, this is what I said at the end of this event, we're going to figure out who won, right? And we can always refer back to the original wording.
You throw the challenge flag, right? Throw that challenge flag.
Yeah, so that was the original vision. And so when we came up with that idea of like, well, let's create these trusted conversations, it was like, okay, who's going to be fast enough to support recording those conversational hashes real time in text messages? And so we obviously Ethereum was off the table because we were just like, okay, Ethereum's not going to be fast enough. At that time we didn't have layer 2s or really very mature side chains or anything like that.
Right.
And so we were like, okay, Ethereum's off the table. And we looked at EOS and we like legitimately evaluated EOS. And we were just like, okay, well, EOS still not fast enough for what we need at the time. And it just wasn't the right fit. And then we saw this article that said the blockchain killer. And then it was Hashgraph, the blockchain killer, I think is what it was. And so I went and read that article and I thought, okay, this might be a thing. Did all my research. We downloaded the SDK. We did a local proof of concept. We were like, holy cow, this is the one protocol that could actually work. It was a private permission network at the time. It was just like an SDK you could download and write some code on. But there wasn't a public network attached to it, which we were like, that's fine. Like we can build proofs around this. The important thing was that it was final and it was incredibly fast and that we could generate those proofs. So we were like, okay, this is what we need. And we spent probably 3 months due diligencing it. And then that's where the story starts of me being like, okay, we need this protocol. I need to fly to Bangkok and meet with Mance and buy him a mango smoothie and see if I can get a license to this. So that was kind of the start of it, was really this Mingo project, which you still hear about here and there. And, Mingo's, it's had its ups and downs, but it's still very much active in the background. I don't know if you watched Tyson Fury's fight last year. Mingo was literally all over everybody's t-shirts, all his team's polos. There were just ads of Tyson Fury and everything. So like Joe's very much active on the business side of it and very much active on the go to market and product market fit side of it. There's some progress coming hopefully here in the next few months as well. I'm not gonna say anything because that's up to him to release through public channels.
Yeah, of course.
But let's just say it's a very active project. It's still a very active project. I think the important thing to remember though is that it's pivoted a few times, right? Like every project in this space, it's pivoted a few times. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. Why it's not, mainstream live yet is it's had to pivot a few times, and partly because of, ecosystem appetite, regulatory boundaries. There's all kinds of stuff that you have to navigate.
And you mentioned, and we were talking about the simplicity factor, right? That is one thing that, Mingo seems like it's going after a lot. I mean, when you look at, a messaging app, you look at cryptocurrency wallet, you look at NFT marketplace, you look at all the, all the marketing stuff going around with Tyson Fury. It's like, that is a very, that's a lot to take. It's a big bite to take off.
It is that's exactly what I was going to say. It's a big bite, and they have right now, or the last I looked, there was 2 apps, right? There was their messaging app, and then they had their wallet, and they were separate. I'm guessing at some point they're probably going to combine those into one application. But they're trying to do a lot.
Maybe I think of it kind of like Google Drive and Google Docs. Where you've got multiple apps that might support each other. And so I know at least, I won't give away any of the secret sauce that's going on, but there are a lot of things going into Mingo. Something I can talk about publicly because it's been announced a couple of years ago was Mingo Play. The idea that there's like this SDK that acts as like a base camp for casual esports. And so the idea is, the reason why the chat app is so important is because it creates this organic channel between you and your friends and your network, right? So you now have this organic channel that you're connected to people. You can discover people in your network through Mingo Chat. That's why Mingo Chat's important. Mingo Wallet's important because you got to manage your keys. So you got Mingo Chat, Mingo Wallet, which are the 2 important kind of core pieces of the ecosystem. And then above and beyond that, there's a whole bunch that goes on beyond that. There's NFT ecosystem. There's Mingo Play with gaming, whether it's, metaverse NFTs. So you want to go play like a race car game as Tyson Fury, right? You got to own the Tyson Fury skin to be able to do that. So there's all kinds of those types of opportunities. And there are a bunch more products out there. I think to your point, though, is this kind of like points to the same thing that we identified with our company that we left to start Launchbadge, which is like start simple, get to market, get market validation. In this ecosystem, we don't see a lot of that. We see it on both sides, right? We see the big projects that are trying to raise funds and trying to run ICOs doing these massive visions because it's what sells. But then you have people who just because they want it, they go and build it. And then they find out they're like, oh, because I needed it, look, other people needed it too. And so there's kind of like this channel of passion projects in this space that do really, really well. And then there's like this channel of like big vision, hype driven projects that tend to struggle or disappear. Now, happy to say that, big vision projects can be successful. I mean, just look at Galaxy. Galaxy's doing really, really well. It's getting ready to do some pretty incredible things here. And I'm not going to talk about timelines with them at all either, but it's a big vision, right? But it has to be a big vision because of who's attached to it, right? And who's involved with it. And they're being very ambitious, but I will tell you that they're also being very strategic about what gets included and what doesn't get included. And there's sufficient amount of stuff included to justify the hype, I guess I would say.
I think Lethos is another one that has the really big vision, a lot of potential, and they're executing the way they need to actually make it to come to fruition.
It's higher risk and it's a lot harder to do. And that higher risk also comes potentially the higher reward. You have a lot of low risk stuff that are fun to watch because they just take off and they do really well. And I like some of the low risk stuff. I mean, one of the apps that I just use for fun for Twitter is the Hedera transactions DApp. It's just, I probably tap that every other day just to see how Hedera is doing. Right. And it's like probably one of the most simple apps. And I'm thinking, why didn't I think of doing this? Like who? Anyway, so.
Yeah. So I think for the ecosystem, the lesson is possibly focus very clearly on solving a problem that creates a return for the customer creates a real value, got utility value. And once you have that traction, you're going down the road, then you can maybe start to work on that bigger vision, because the crypto space is full of projects that have big vision and no execution.
I think that's exactly kind of what we're doing with Twigital. Is Jesse comes up, my partner, Jesse Damrow. He has all these big visions of having networks of authenticators for the 3D objects that we create for insurance and everything else. But the first thing is just to get the application to create the objects and then tokenize them. So it first thing first, and then we'll get to the big stuff down the line.
Yeah, and I think, Tony, your point is like, once it has traction, that was the key word in what you said is, you've got to get traction somewhere. We can make a lot of assumptions about what's valuable to the market, and we can build toward that. And there are some projects that you've got sufficient funding, you've got sufficient timeline, you've got sufficient, market reach. There are some projects out there, anything that LG is going to build, everybody's going to be aware of, right? So there are certain projects that are positioned and financially positioned and market-wise positioned in a way where they can take that kind of risk of building these bigger visions. I think when we're talking about startups, and I would say this is valid for every startup, is again, going back to the first thing I said, which is get to market quickly, validate the value. So Tony, you're saying once you start getting traction, you're kind of on the right track. When you build something simple, you start getting traction, and it's like, okay, what's valuable here? I look at CryptoZoo, and they were going for, what was it, a year and a half or something like that, 2 years of just nothing really getting delivered. And this guy, I think Yippee is his name, built RealZoo in a weekend, and I still play the game. I probably put $100 towards RealZoo because I can actually touch it and play it. And I'm just impressed that, like he said, listen, CryptoZoo was a big scam. I don't think it was a scam. I think there were scammers involved, and I think that there was a lot of crypto hype and a lot of unnecessary stuff going on there. Well, this guy Yippee comes out and says, I'm just going to build RealZoo in a weekend, have a friend do some assets for me. And it's turned into a business for him, because all he did was built this really simple thing that took him a weekend to build. The timing was right because everybody's attention was on this. He put out a YouTube video, was like, how did I rebuild CryptoZoo? And then he crossed out crypto and puts RealZoo in a weekend, something that took them 2 years not to build. How hard is it really? And then he built it and shows his process of building it. And it's those types of things where, like, it started out as like a really simple project that he built in a weekend. And now a month and a half later, like, it's a business, and it's the project that the product itself is getting better because he opened up Discord and said, what do you guys want to see in this? And everybody's talking about what they want, and he's putting it on a clear roadmap that everybody can see. And he's got, even on his roadmap, he's got a little animation of like a little circling arrow that's saying, this is the exact thing I'm working on right now that will come next. And then it shows up a couple weeks later, and you're like, yes, this is how products need to get built.
Sure.
Totally.
All right, so we're going to experiment. So we're going to take a minute here, and this is something that was requested. So speaking of things that users want in the space, and things that people are requesting, had a number of people that said, you guys talk a lot about great teams and great products on your live stream, but you guys don't ever talk about Walla Walla, and you don't show off the great application that you've got. So we're going to do one of these after these messages. We'll be right back. This is a little bit experimental. First time that we've done this on the Alternative Money Monday. Well, not the first time. We've actually done a couple demos, and I'm always a little bit leery of doing live demos on live streams. But we're gonna jump in. We're gonna take a look at, since we're talking with Ken from Launchbadge. The most recent direction for Launchbadge and the Kabuto project is the Kabuto name service. So we're going to do a little bit and show off some of the Kabuto name service as it exists in Walla Walla here. So we'll do that.
Live demo. What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong, right?
You guys seen that video of Steve Jobs? What happened to him?
Yeah.
All right, so here we are in our lovely Walla Wallet application. Thanks to the design team for the great work that they've done on revamping and renewing and giving us the beautiful facelift. Thanks to all the work that's been done. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to select HBAR. We're going to send some HBAR to Ken. We like Ken, so we're going to send in some HBAR. So we select HBAR from the list there. Now you can see over here on the right in our main wallets tab, main wallet, what do we call this box here? We're going to tap on send, all right? And we're going to send to, you said ken.hh, yeah? So here we go. So no account number is necessary here. We're going to go ken.hh. And if you notice that little ugly message that said, you got to send to a valid account ID. We want people to make sure that they're sending to something valid. And we also show you where the name does. So I'm hoping that this account ID looks familiar, Ken. All right. So I'm going to send you, I'm feeling really generous today. I'm going to send a whopping 5 HBAR.
Yes.
Retirement, here we come.
Here we come. That's the start of it.
Yeah, the guy who bought 2 pizzas with 10,000 bitcoins.
Yes.
All right, Kabuto name service for the win. Here we go. You can see the fees. One of the things that we took a lot of effort to be very clear about fees. The fee description. It's it's one of those. It's something that people need to know what they're paying for. So as long as you agree to the fees, we're going to slide to pay.
To pay, nice action.
Thank you for that. And then assuming that we're, hopefully there's no I did a live success. Boom. So Ken, you didn't ask for any payment for showing up on the live stream, but you didn't even know that you were going to get 5 HBAR. So there you go. And away we go. So that is how you send utilizing Kabuto name service within Walla Wallet. And just wanted to take a brief moment to show that off. Next week we'll go, so folks, if you're out there in the YouTube audience and and you have something in particular that you'd like to see, drop us a line. Let us know what you'd like to see within Walla Wallet. We're happy to do demos here. If you want to check out staking and how the collect rewards feature works, all those kinds of things, just let us know. Drop a comment in the description below the live stream here, and we will make sure that we are demonstrating things that you can do within Walla Wallet. Go ahead, Tony. What you got?
Yeah, so let's talk about the name service for a second. You just used a domain. Ken's domain was .hh. Ken, how many different TLDs are there that you guys support? And are you supporting just proprietary, or is it open to the other naming services in the Hedera ecosystem?
Yeah, so I'll talk real quick about why KNS is different than the other naming services. So KNS uses a combination of NFTs for defining ownership. So if you're a TLD admin, meaning you're the point of contact for that TLD, you have an NFT that allows you the authority to manage that TLD. And then if you are a domain owner, you have an NFT associated with that domain. And that basically says you are allowed to edit the records associated with that domain. So once you have that NFT, the records themselves are stored in the smart contract. So if you'll notice here, there's no AppNet, no business network, there's no HCS, anything. It's all done with NFTs and smart contracts. That's it. Now, for convenience purposes, we built a resolver that's kind of like a caching service that talks to the mirror node and unpacks the stream from the mirror node and says, okay, here's who owns which TLDs and DNS, which domains.
Like DNS?
Yeah, it's like DNS. But anybody can host a resolver. So anybody can host a resolver. And if you don't trust the resolver, it is still in development. It's still in beta. So there are still bugs that periodically pop up. But if you don't trust the resolver, you can still go talk to the smart contract and figure out how to resolve names there. And we have functionality in the SDK for that as well. So the point here being is we've defined a protocol that Launchbadge doesn't even have to be involved with anymore. Right. So hopefully this will grow. And if Launchbadge ever goes away or decides to hand KNS off to the open source community, the protocol will continue. That's the big difference between what we did and any other protocol. So we've got Hashgraph name service, and we've got hashgraph.name, and we've got Web23. They've got kind of a common protocol that uses HCS for their stuff. Kabuto name service resolver resolves their domains as well. So their TLDs get resolved through KNS resolver as well. We've built additional functionality to listen to that HCS stream and kind of cache it and resolve with it. The domains that the TLDs that we currently support through the KNS protocol are the .hh, which is the Hedera Hashgraph TLD, and the .hbar symbol, the Planck's constant, lowercase Planck's constant, right? It's kind of hard to type in any service. But what we did is kind of as a shortcut, we said, hey, if anybody puts .h in, the KNS resolver will interpret that to the Planck's concept.
Okay.
So you can actually, yeah, it's definitely doable. So it works. It's just, I think if we ever get a .htld, then we're going to have to undo that.
Yeah. How do you prevent that? Who's in charge of that? The TLD .h.
So .h is not actually a TLD. What we've done in the KNS resolver and the caching layer, we just interpret .h to the Planck's constant for now.
What's the barrier to securing that TLD? Is it a large cache outflow that has to happen to create a TLD.h?
No, actually, we're going through this process. I'll talk briefly about this with Web23. They've got a few projects they're launching, and the next one's going to be on the KNS protocol. We're literally writing up a standard proposal process. So they wrote a proposal for a TLD that we're about to launch. And I'm actually glad you're bringing this up because we're going to put this out on Twitter and we're going to take the public sentiment. We're going to basically take we're going to take the pulse of the community and say, hey, is everybody okay with us launching this TLD? So we want to get people's input. We want this eventually to move to a co-op model where voting is actually like trackable through tokens. But for right now, what we're doing is we're building this standardized protocol, the what we call Kabuto action proposal. And it has a format for a TLD proposal. So anybody that's going to launch a TLD could say, for example, go to Web23. They'll walk them through that process of preparing that proposal and also deduplicating across other naming services. So, for example, we don't want anybody launching .eth. We don't want anybody launching .web3 or anything like that, right? So when we deduplicate, we're deduplicating against the IANA list, we're deduplicating against unstoppable domains and any of the major existing providers that we're aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that's kind of documented in the standard, the community can validate that. The community can look at that and go, okay, did they actually go check with unstoppable domains, or is unstoppable? Do they have a proposal out that's going to put future conflict with what is going on here? But the idea is we want the community's feedback on it. So we think of it as an RFP, like a request for proposal process. We do want it to be relatively quick, so put it out there for about a week and let people vote on it and provide feedback. And then once that happens, then we just hit a couple buttons and it launches it. Now, in the future, what we want to do is we want this to be built into that co-op voting model. We want, when people put a proposal out, it gets attached to a smart contract, a voting smart contract. And when that voting smart contract passes, it auto issues the TLD. For right now, Launchbadge is still the ones launching that TLD, but we can swap our key out for the smart contract ID whenever we want.
Right. And quick shout out to the HBAR Foundry. Of course, the folks here are familiar with the HBAR Foundry. So we are looking, and I hope that you can get Dell, please invite Dell. And Dell knows that Dell's been in the HBAR Foundry before, not always active, but but hopefully we can kind of, get eyeballs on that, because one of the current, the existing goal of the HBAR Foundry is to really, is to help the community, particularly the developer community, but also the business developers, to get line of sight on the things that are being done, such that we can really set, so we can really help to set standards and solve the problems in the ecosystem.
Maybe that poll is something we can drop in the Twitter space tomorrow, Brandon.
Absolutely, no problem.
So Ken, I did want to go back a little. I wanted to go back to the Launchbadge story in Hedera. So I know that that folks that are watching or probably would like to hear a little bit about the. So at one time we kind of would joke around, but it was like if you had a question about building on Hedera, it was like, well, you gotta go ask Ryan or go. It was basically all roads led to Launchbadge. Now, of course, that's not to say that Launchbadge is the only team that that helped Hedera. The LimeChain was another team that was instrumental, but you really can't overstate the amount that Launchbadge and yourself put into the Hedera ecosystem. So could you talk just a little bit about a little bit about how that happened, but more so, I'm interested in, you decided to go independent again, right? So you're no longer a part of the internal Hedera team. So if you could just talk a little bit about what was that like, where you decided, you know what, I might be better off working with the community. What was that decision like for you?
Yeah. So there were some personal things that came up in 2021, early 2021. Had family medical things that I had to take a few months off to deal with. And that gave me a lot of time to think, a lot of time where I wasn't in the day-to-day of Hedera.
Right.
And so I did a lot of thinking in that time, spending time with my kids and doing stuff there. And then as I was coming back, I said, you know what? We've kind of grown to the point where we've got these, ex-Oracle execs coming into the team. The DA team, the developer advocate team, is growing. I don't really need to be involved in the day-to-day at that point. It was more strategic and more about, okay, who's the next council member I'm going to be talking to? Who's the next, to be frank, I spent a lot of time in 2020, early 2021, in the sustainability space, working with Wes on that entire vision of the Guardians and stuff like that. So I was consuming a good chunk of my time was like working on use cases, right? So I'm a Hedera employee working on use cases for other people's companies, which I'm kind of like, I was there to support it. That's my job, is to get that adoption. And we have to build these initial models. But at some point I just felt like, you know what? Wes has got the whole sustainability space. He's more invested in that than I will ever be. And he's a smart guy. He gets it, and he can drive this. I don't really need to be there to drive this. And we had teams coming up. We had both Launchbadge and Envision participating in that summer in the Guardian model. That the original Guardian model came out of Launchbadge. We built that for Rectify, which was a project that came out of there. And so we built the entire Guardian model from Launchbadge. As a matter of fact,
wow.
Chris Campbell was the one who did the architecture for that in the initial proof of concept. He sometimes gets a little upset when he sees his diagrams being used on other people's presentations and it's getting a lot of attention, like in Davos. He's like, wait a second, that was my diagram. They just ripped out the part.
It's at the center of our sustainability ecosystem. It really is. It's amazing. So kudos to him.
Well, yeah, and it made sense, right? So when we were doing it at the time, we didn't have smart contracts. We were also looking for efficiencies. When we would have smart contracts, we wanted to figure out how to do this more efficiently than smart contracts. And so the architecture and the proof of concept came out of Launchbadge originally as an engagement with Rectify. So this was something that I wasn't even allowed to be involved in the negotiation of. This is something where I was working on the DA side, but I wasn't even able to talk between Rectify and Launchbadge and negotiate that contract. That was actually something Ryan did and coordinated that. And then they worked on building that initial Guardian model. And then Envision kind of like took the leadership on that and ran with it. But that summer I was just, I was sitting there thinking like, wow, the team is self-sustaining. We've got good people on the team. We've got good leadership. We just brought on Richard and Jasper, which are an incredible open source team, great for testing and ensuring stability of the technology. So I felt like the company was in good hands at that point.
Right.
And I kind of felt like my contribution would be minimal compared to what I could do on the outside. I felt like if I were to go back to Launchbadge, there's a lot we could do at Launchbadge that would help with the community more. And in 2021, I was thinking about Kabuto. I was thinking about Kabuto being the developer stack and having that kind of alchemy experience for Hedera. So that was kind of where my head was at. As a matter of fact, I was getting a little obsessed with Kabuto at the time, thinking, okay, we need to get funding from HBAR Foundation, because that started happening towards the end of the summer of 2021. And I was just thinking, okay, but we got to get the diagrams right. We got to get the specifications right. We got to get the traction. And so at that point, I made the decision that, my brain was stuck on a use case, and I felt like I could accomplish that use case with Launchbadge. much better than I could do it from inside Hedera, where my attention would be drawn to like 100 different use cases.
Well, I gotta say, Ken, we're incredibly grateful that you did wind up making that move, because, you know, really, since you've kind of come back to the community, so to speak. I mean, you know, you're just such a positive force for the community, you know, particularly for the developers. I mean, as we, you know, and now that, you know, some of the foundational groundwork has been laid for Hedera. You know, now that we're really starting to move into other communities, other ecosystems, building those bridges, you know, we need your leadership. So, you know, big thanks. And we're happy to have you back.
You're making me blush.
He's descended from the ivory tower and joined the plebes. No, I'm just kidding.
And I always joke, I love the fray. I love when your company's, you know, hasn't reached its series funding yet. That's where I have all my fun, is like in that friends and family seed angel round. That's where all the stress and all the hype and all the excitement happens. Then once you get your series funding, it's just like, oh, now we just got to hire people and support people.
Politics.
And politics. Yeah. Now we got to do biz dev, and it's like,
right. So real quick, Tim, I want to make sure that we're reaching out to the YouTube audience. If there are any questions out there, I think we missed a couple questions last week. So if there are any questions, no questions too stupid, even if it's about my beautiful beard. We had some questions pop in about my beard a couple times. So it was a few times that came up. So no question is too out there. If there's anything coming from the audience, of course, please, Tim, let us know.
No questions, but really nice comments. And I'm pretty sure Driggles is Mr. Dell Iglesia, right?
Ah, yes. Yeah.
He's just expressing his excitement. It's like he didn't know that Polar Wallet could handle other TLD in the Hedera ecosystem. It's rather cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
I'll have to reach back out to Dell. We'll have to have another conversation. We chatted on the Alternative Money Monday. Was it last week? The weeks go by so fast. Yeah, it was last week. Yeah. But all right, well, great. So we're in just a minute here. We're going to give away some jam tokens too. But before we do that, Brandon, would you mind jumping in and doing some Market Mondays? If you've got anything ready for us, I'd love to take a look at how the markets are doing. And of course, folks, none of this is meant to be taken as investment advice. It's all people sharing their educated opinions. So please take it as educational and entertainment purposes only. But go ahead and take it away with some Market Mondays, Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely. So last week there was a couple data points that came out. I think Wednesday or Thursday they came out with the PPI, which is it's the Producer's Price Index, which is another form of inflation measurement. A lot of times people pay a lot more attention to the CPI, but the Fed, the Central Bank of the United States, pays attention to both. So when that came out a little bit hotter than expected, more inflation than expected, risk assets kind of sold off a bit. So that was stocks, and of course crypto is lumped into that. So we saw some pressure Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or last week, or at least going into Friday. And then during Friday, throughout the day, it actually held up pretty well, and we saw a pretty good recovery. That has had crypto hitting some key levels. So speaking of Bitcoin, right now Bitcoin is sitting at $24,850, which is right under that $25,000 mark. And the $25,000 mark is pretty darn important. There was some critical points there before this last bull run, and then once we had this crash in 22, in June of 22, where we really sold off and we broke through that $30,000 level and then dropped down to about 17, it came back up throughout the summer, and in August it reached 25,000. And then it sold off again. So that has become a pretty critical point. So if we can push through that 25,000, there's really not much resistance all the way up to 30. And I said there's a couple key points here. The other key level is with Hedera. So with HBAR, we broke 8 cents, which is a really critical level that we've seen a few times. So in the summer of 22, when we dropped off in June and then came back up, we hit around that 8 cent level and then sold off going into the fall again. So that was a key area of resistance, actually going all the way back to 2020. So when Google was announced as a governing council member, we went from about 2 cents and spiked all the way up, just a doji, just a spike high to about 8 cents. But there's been several times throughout the HBAR market that 8 cents has held some important levels. That's where back in June when we made a run up, we hit 8 cents and we fell back down. And then we hit it again a little bit later, just a few weeks ago. Well, we broke through that level when Dell was announced as a governing council member. We shot up to around the 10 cent level, came back down, tested 8 cents. So we established some support there. So 8 cents has now pretty much flipped to support. The HBAR market, we're making higher highs, we're making higher lows. So overall, the HBAR charts are looking pretty darn good. And again, looking for support. If we do fall down, we're going to look for support at 8 cents. And if we jump up as far as resistance, I'm looking at about 10 cents. Now, if Bitcoin can break through 25,000 and then really doesn't have much resistance all the way up to 30, if we break through that 25, initially I would expect a pullback in all the alts, including HBAR. But once it establishes itself, if it establishes itself over 25,000, then I would expect a run up for HBAR breaking through that 10 cent level. And depending where Bitcoin levels out, if we do make it above, we may get back up into the teens. So just a fun market all around. And of course, the fundamentals for Hedera are just taking off, especially with all the use cases. We have Atmio, we have a fresh supply company that hopefully we're going to get some more information about here in the near future. Just exciting to see everything that's being built.
Is there any doubt that January saw the bottom? The bottom is in for the crypto markets.
There is always the potential for doubt there, Tony. But I do think that that was a pretty decisive low. And I mean, we've gone up almost 300% since then. Now, it would really take a macro hit. So if we were to enter a recession or something along those lines, we could certainly test those levels again. But absent a really nasty macro environment, I think those probably were the lows. My own opinion, not financial advice.
Hey, Brandon. Did you guys see something about someone unstaking almost 60 million worth of HBAR? Did you guys do any follow-up on that? And what was really happening? I saw something about it on Reddit.
I'm not sure. I didn't catch that one on Reddit. All I know is our total value locked across all DeFi has been going up fairly steadily. Now that's all of DeFi. That's not necessarily native staking for Hedera. But I'd actually, Tim, if you don't mind, if you can send me that so I can kind of look into it, I'd appreciate it.
It was on Stata. I think I'll send you
Okay.
a link and you guys can check it out.
All right, cool. And actually, just before we did this interview next week, so I did actually Mike Maloney, who got a lot of people into this space, he interviewed me for an update in the Hedera ecosystem, and that should be coming out early next week. So that's going to be exciting to see.
I wasn't sure if I could mention that or not, Brandon. So I'm glad you
No.
dropped that little. I'm glad you dropped that one in there because I was like, I was having a crisis. Like, I want to tell everybody that Brandon's being interviewed by Mike Maloney, who
Yeah.
I mean, that was
No
absolutely-
secret.
I fully admit it. That was how I found out about Hashgraph. That was how
Oh
I-
yeah, he really
down that rabbit hole.
brought a lot of people over. I think Mike Maloney's a rock star.
And we're going to try to update their community to let them know that Hedera is coming to the expectations for Hedera are actually coming to fruition, and we're seeing a lot of exciting stuff. So I tried to convey that. Of course, I was a little bit nervous. He's one of my heroes. I've been following him for a long time, like it sounds like you guys have as well. But at the same time, I think I conveyed the excitement that's happening within our ecosystem.
Hey, I just want to ask Ken before we go, where do I get one of those hats, bro?
This is a early design version. I'm actually going to be
nice.
going with the silicon prints coming up instead of the embroidery. We'll have to put up the Launchbadge store too.
Yeah, we need to get some Walla Wallet swag going too. Rob and I
Yes,
have
we
been
do.
talking about that for a while, but it's one of those that keeps kind of getting pushed under the rug. But so before we go ahead and before we announce our Jam token winner, Ken, if you could kind of leave us with some thoughts about Launchbadge and Kabuto. So really, it seems like Kabuto is really where Launchbadge is kind of settled in. Like if you've got if Launchbadge, if your product has a persona, if you've got, it seems like you guys have really kind of settled into Kabuto. That's your, that's whether it's before it was the mirror node and you've shifted and you're forging in a new direction with the Kabuto name service, but that branding really seems to suit you guys, and it's kind of where you settled in. What would you like the community to know about Kabuto, where it's at, and the future of Kabuto, and how that fits into the Hedera ecosystem in general?
Yeah, well, I mean, Launchbadge has two sides of the house, right? We've got the development side of the house, and then we've got kind of the product side of the house. And
Sure.
so the development side of the house, we're always open to new projects. So anytime somebody has a project that's coming up, you can go to our website and fill out a form, and one of our biz dev team members will contact you. I would say that on that side of the house, we're really establishing ourselves in both the Northern California and the California region. We take global clients, but we're establishing a really good foundation of partners with investors and with venture studios and all of that stuff. So we're not just here to support the development. We're also are here to help with planning, strategic stuff. We just launched a fractional CTO offering. So anybody that doesn't have an actual CTO, but maybe has a smart programmer and wants that kind of CTO direction, we'll help with that. So the development side of the house, we're absolutely available for engagements in the Hedera space and even in the non-crypto space. I mean, we're not discriminating against anybody. We'll help people with what we know. On the product side of the house, I would say, yeah, Kabuto is our brand on the product side of the house right now. We're really sinking our teeth into that, and really focusing. We're kind of trying to eat our own dog food when we say launch something simple and follow the traction. You know, I think when we were building the Mirror node and building the Explorer, we were doing that because there was a need for it, not because it was simple and we could find a product market fit. I think Kabuto name service is that perfect fit. It's something that was simple enough we were able to build in a week. We got to market quickly. We're getting good feedback. We're getting good engagement. We're kind of doing exactly what we tell people to do when it comes to, you know, start with that MVP, something simple, go get that product market fit quick. And Kabuto is, you know, it's our playground to try out what we preach and to build those processes and procedures in place to make that simple for our clients to do the same thing.
Great. Awesome. Thanks for that. And if folks want to learn more, if they want to follow Kabuto and the progress and what you guys are working on, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you or to follow the project?
Yeah. So if you want to get a hold of us, I would go to launchbadge.com.
Okay.
Launchbadge.com has, it's our website, obviously. So it's got all of our offerings there. And it also has a form you can fill out and send us inquiries or engagement requests. If you want to follow us on Twitter, Launchbadge is our Twitter handle. And for Kabuto, it's Kabuto_SH. So if you're a developer, you know what SH is. That's your bash script extension. So, and as a matter of fact, the Kabuto website is kabuto.sh. And so Twitter is just Kabuto_SH is our Twitter handle. And that's where you're going to get most of our Kabuto updates is there.
Great. Well, Ken, I can't thank you enough for joining us again. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. Can't thank you enough, especially it was on short notice. So thanks again for joining us and doing that. Yeah, it's always a pleasure. So this is probably my favorite part of the show, though. We're going to give away some jam tokens. I love giving stuff away. I love sending Ken 5 HBAR, but I love giving away these 10,000 jam tokens. Real quick shout out to Andrew Antar and the team over at Tune.fm for giving us these jam tokens to help promote them and the great stuff that they're doing in the streaming music industry, bringing that into the Web3 space. So Tim, could you tell us who from the Twitter family is the winner of 10,000 jam tokens today?
Absolutely. We have at Vad_Brewer. He is our winner, 10,000 jam.
All right. Vad_Brewer, the winner of 10,000 jam tokens. Love getting those tokens into people's hands so they can see how fast and efficient and easy it is to use the Hashgraph network. If there's any other questions or any other announcements, of course, now's the time to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to say thanks for joining us and adios, folks. We will see you next week. Thanks for joining.